Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Tuesday, April 8th. We're broadcasting live on Rumble, live on Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, every podcast platform you can ever imagine. And yeah, it's great to be with you today. We have yet another highly controversial show. Very special guest with us today in the Joy Virtual Studio. James Lindsay is going to be with us in just a moment to talk about the woke right. And this is a term that just absolutely infuriates a lot within the MAGA movement and the conservative movement, but it is something that is popping its head up yet again. I think people need to understand what is woke right, its relation to woke left, and what they plan to move us into in the next couple years. There's so much happening, so much confusion, an enormous amount of chaos, and it's hard to even know what it means to be right or left these days. What does it mean actually to be a Republican? What does it mean actually to be a Democrat? Do the Democrat and Republican parties, as constituted in Washington, D.C. today, based on their policy over the past 15 to 20 years, even reflect what their supporters and their party members think they are from outside of D.C.? Are they working together, right? Like, what does it mean these days? It's very difficult to understand what these terms mean and what the division, by the way, of the American population between right and left is doing to our country, and what we're missing as a culture and a country because we continue to allow ourselves to be divided. So this is going to be a big conversation with a pretty smart guy. His name is James Lindsay, and we're going to get to that in just a moment on the Shannon Joy Show. Want to thank the sponsors today. We couldn't bring this show to you without all of our sponsors. Of course, Colonial Metals Group. You're going to hear from them. PCM and Associates, All Family Pharmacy, Native Path brand of products, which I absolutely love. Chef's Foundry, Pots and Pans, and of course, a new advertiser. You're going to hear from them today. Blackout Coffee. So excited to welcome Blackout Coffee to the family of Shannon Joy advertisers. We have a very, very special 20% offer today, just for 20% off offer today, just for the Joy family. So it's 20% off. You have to go to blackoutcoffee.com/joy. That's blackoutcoffee.com/joy. You're going to hear about them a little later in the program. Want to go to the live chat and say hello to all of you. We're going to have an hour-long conversation with James and a bit of discourse about what it means to be woke. What is this ideology? Is it a cult? Has it infiltrated both parties? And is it the root of so much of the division in the United States of America today? And is that division the cause of so many of our problems? Why can't we have nice things, guys, here in the US? Why can't we ever get rational, reasonable, sober solutions to the problems that we face today? Why is everything so heightened, so politicized, so vicious, one side to another? We're going to talk about all those things today, but I do want to say hello to all of you. After that conversation, we're going to open up the live chat for questions and comments, of course, at the top of the hour. And want to say hello to Buskman very first on the live chat today here on Rumble. Thanks, Shannon, for continually challenging the narrative in so many areas of our culture today, as well as doing your best to bring solutions instead of complaining. Hey, Buskman, totally appreciate that comment. And we'll continue to try to do that. I think I have a hunch that part of the problem is this continued division of like-minded, reasonable Americans as we get dragged to the periphery by both of these woke elements in both parties. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. CJP Rumble is with us on the live chat. Honor Seeker is with us today. Thank you for being with us on the live chat. I see you, Guitar Lily. And yes, to those of you who are freezing up here in New York State, it is cold. It's actually, we have about an inch and a half of snow outside right now. Absolutely ridiculous. This is typical New York weather in the spring, but you never really get used to it. Edgar 615 is here with us on the live chat. Strident Conservative, David Leach, featured in the Shannon Joy Show notes, one of the articles from stridentconservative.com. I used to call woke right by another name conservative socialists. Well, you could call them that, conservative communists, maybe conservative fascists, I don't know. What do the words mean, right? I'm not smart enough to figure all this out. I'm just a girl trying to get a nut here in the United States of America in the year 2025, have a husband, 3 kids, everything is crazy. And, we try to have discourse about politics and ideas in our culture, but it seems like everything is just going off the rails, not only on the left. We dealt with that for 4 years during the Biden administration. They literally propped up a corpse, it seemed like, throughout the 4 years of his administration. And we had just the outrageous policies of that administration. But now we swap it again and we're into another Trump administration. And it just seems as crazy as it has always been. And I just need someone with me here to try to make sense of all of this. He's really smart, probably the intellectual heavyweight behind the identification of woke within the left, within the Democratic Party, often used by some of the biggest platformed voices in the conservative right, like people like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and Candace Owens. And his name is James Lindsay. He's an author, mathematician, philosopher, professional troublemaker, gets in a lot of trouble with both the right and the left. He's an expert on a range of subjects, including religion, philosophy of science, and critical theory. And, you just make everyone mad, James, right? Because back in the day when you were using your intellect and these theories to kind of identify why the Democratic Party went bananas, right, with critical race theory and critical gender theory and LGBTQ, whatever, right? You were the darling of the conservative right. But when you began to take that same theory and identify elements of it in the woke right, pointing out the very similar cult-like behavior, it was off with your head, right? Nobody liked James Lindsay anymore. And then, you're out. You're completely out, right? So what has it been like? Let's just start there with your platforming in American media and politics and what it has been like to really be ostracized by both political parties, or at least the more radical elements of the political parties over the past decade or so.
Well, I mean, the first thing you can say is that the radical elements mostly control both sides, and so the reason that I was originally ostracized from the left was because I was moderately there, and the extremists wouldn't have it, and so the entire group wouldn't have it, and so the so-called moderate left could have stood up for other people who were moderately left and maybe held a conservative position or two, but they didn't and they couldn't. And now we see a similar phenomenon happening within the conservative right, or actually not the conservative right, the not conservative right. What we really should call the progressive right has taken control of right wing politics. And it's the same thing. So it was much more poignant when, 2000, I don't know, 13, 14, I started speaking up against the woke on the left. And kind of one thing led to another that grew. It led to me doing the grievance studies affair where I wrote all those fake academic papers. And the mainstream left more or less saw me as this kind of dangerous rogue element, but I played everything really safely. I got invited to go on Tucker Carlson's Fox show. I got invited onto Laura Ingram's Fox show. I got invited into a lot of Fox shows after that grievance studies affair. And we said no to all of those invitations because we wanted to make it not political. We wanted to make it a statement about what was going on in academia and the corruption of scholarship. And we knew, even though it's not fair to Fox or people that do stuff with Fox, that to appear on Fox would be to become partisan, not necessarily in who we were, but in terms of how we would be perceived. And I was friends with, I guess I still am friends with Brett Weinstein, but at the time I was friends with Brett Weinstein and was talking to him about it. And he said, if you go on Fox, there's no bridge back. You just need to understand, you don't get to come home.
Mm.
You're done. And so it was already extraordinarily partisan like that, cultish partisan like that on the left. And that would have been in 2017 or 2018 when I had that conversation. So that was a long, long time ago. But it was much more poignant to go through it because at first I didn't really understand what I was dealing with. But secondly, there was a landing pad. The right was very interested in talking with me. The right was very interested in platforming me. The right was very interested, like you said, I became something of this kind of intellectual darling. I always think it's funny when people describe me that way because I always perceived that I was more like the dog everybody loves, but you keep him on the porch. I wasn't really let inside the house, if you follow me. And so now it's like, the leash is taken off and I've been kicked in the ass and told to get off the porch. But when the right also left me.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf, and I have a message. Um, President Trump is in the process of what he calls draining the swamp. But many in the MAGA movement and the MAHA movement are asking if he'll expose the entire pandemic. There's enough public evidence for people to be concerned who injected themselves in what has turned out to be a massive experiment. If you were compelled to get the shot for work, travel, maybe you just trusted the system, check out this natural solution formulated by hero doctor Peter McCullough in collaboration with the wellness company. They just leveled up their original detox formula, and it costs $30 less. We are introducing the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox. It's now conveniently consolidated into a single capsule with 4 times more nattokinase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, and 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase, an enzyme researched for its anti-clotting effects, may work to break down spike proteins. Combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research. It offers effective support for your cell's natural repair and recovery. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all to bring you the truth. Head over to dailyclouthealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's dailyclouthealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off and get back to that pre-COVID feeling.
So the left left me, while the right left me too. It was much more obvious to me what was going on, and it was much more peculiar in a way because I had just spent 4 or 5 years associating with these people who said that their entire program was, we like people who speak the truth. We don't we don't cancel people. We're the people who accept people who have been canceled and help them to be able to speak the truth where they haven't been allowed to because of the left. And let's just cut through all of it. That's bullshit. They're just as tribal as the other side. It's almost always tribe over truth. They're every bit as tribal the second one of their kind of sacred cows gets poked, but it's also every bit as fake, right? So the left had a coordinated operation going on starting in the early 2010s, actually earlier, but certainly on social media, the blog environment from the early 2010s, pushing extremely hard to make sure that the entire left went the direction that it did. It was getting on social media and artificially inflating woke talking points and swarming and we used to call them Twitter storms.
Yeah.
Swarming behavior on anybody who was mostly people who are on the left who didn't toe the line. They would associate with you being conservative, et cetera, et cetera. We all know what cancel culture
Can
looks like.
can I pause you there for a
Yeah.
minute as we talk about the Democrat Party and how it became overwhelmed and infiltrated and then ultimately controlled by this swarm of woke leftists, radical leftists. So what you're describing is a party that was traditionally, loves America, believes in the Constitution, believes in the Bill of Rights, free speech, and those type of things. They might bicker with Republicans over the size of government or welfare programs or whether it's a federal issue or a state issue. They might have serious disagreements about abortion or pro-life issues, but essentially believed in this country and its founding and the basic tenets of this country, fairness and equality and basic common sense and rationality. And then so you could have a reasonable discussion with the Democrat about policy, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you could separate at the end, and then you might disagree and vote for a different person, but that's okay because that's what we do in the US. But what you're saying is that there was a concerted effort, clearly a social media campaign or operation to come in, and this happened in academia and college campuses, in public school academia as well, and then clearly on social media to come in and just rip the party away from that ethos and into this new critical um, you know, you know, critical race theory at our founding. We are an evil nation, and then that's when they dove into all of the craziness, right? The racism, if against white people, the bringing pornography into public schools and putting it in front of school age children because that was woke in terms of gender ideology and sexuality. So abusing young kids, like all of the psychotic things that we saw, the burning of cities, BLM in 2020, that all came out of this hijacking of what was once a political party. And I'm sorry to go on and on, but I just want to make sure
no, it's
that I understand
yeah.
what.
Yeah, so a few things. One is I think that story's a little oversimplifying. The Democrats have kind of been behind a lot of some really crappy stuff all the way back to Andrew Jackson,
Sure.
who
Yep.
founded the party. But what happened in the 2010s was that the Democratic Socialists, and I don't necessarily mean the formal organization, the DSA, the Democratic Socialist mentality, aka the Bolshevik mentality, took over the Democratic Party. And this was a coordinated effort. I think that through the 90s at the very least, but possibly even before that, um, there was a tremendous softening through the political correctness campaigns that were pushed culturally through the 90s, through the rise of kind of postmodern feminist literature through the 90s, which was a major problem at the time and kind of died down in the early 2000s. Um, I think they rode the wave of the failure of George W. Bush, which was primarily a, whether you want to call it neoconservative failure, but really a globalist failure on his part, him being part of the problem. But they rode the wave of the failure of George W. Bush to push what amounts to a Bolshevik revolution to consolidate power inside the Democratic Party. And a lot of this was not driven by people who knew they were doing it at the point of the whip anyway. They were mentally ill people who'd probably primarily been made mentally ill through social media exposure and academic exposure to things like feminist theory and intersectionality and critical race theory. And these people bullied the party, and it was all kind of channeled by intentional elements. Whoever was manipulating the counts, the like counts, the retweet counts, and so on, the reach, the algorithms in social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, but particularly on Twitter, it was a problem. So-called Twitter 1.0, but also through political entities like Zach Exley's Justice Democrats, which people have forgotten was um, the original organization that put together what we call the squad today. AOC was one of their recruits to bring into Congress. That was called the Justice Democrats. Their symbol it's a J and a D with a star, and it looks suspiciously like a hammer and sickle turned into a JD. But it was run by a smart political operative on the left who I would strongly suggest has DSA or Democratic Socialist tendencies, named Zach Exley. And a lot of people forget that this stuff is coordinated. Um, So yes, that is more or less what I'm saying. The right, like I said, it was a little bit more of a shocking phenomenon to watch this grow. I think the purchase of X was absolutely integral. There was a large matriculation from uh, toilets of the internet like Gab and 4chan onto X. I predicted this the day that Elon Musk said he was going to buy it, make it a free speech site. I predicted that A, leftist elements, but B, also radical right elements would flood the platform and basically make it unusable. The
Right.
left with the goal of bringing censorship back, the right with the goal of basically poisoning discourse. And I want to draw a line dividing conservatives and the right. And this isn't a line I'm drawing. This is a line that they draw for themselves. The people we're dealing with on the so-called woke right or radical right or dissident right or even alt right, to use their old term for themselves, do not consider themselves conservative. They
Right.
consider themselves right wing, and they make a clear distinction between those things. These people are not conservatives. They are progressives pushing right wing progressivism, which looks like fascism and Nazism.
Right.
Not necessarily full blast, but yes, also full blast. It's also heavily infiltrated in a way that I don't think earlier social media was, but I'm not positive, which is through foreign influence. But this campaign, not the second that Elon took over, although it started to come over, a lot of racist content, a lot of Nazi content, all hiding behind that's what the left called us. So you're a joke if you call it out. We're not
Hmm.
doing this anymore. That's one of their phrases. We're not doing this anymore. So they'll make an explicitly racist comment, like disgustingly racist comment that's absolutely unnecessary. It's not even rooted in stuff like the race and IQ arguments or a blatantly anti-Semitic comment. And then when you say that's anti-Semitic, they'll say, we're not doing this anymore. The left did this for 10 years. We're not
Right.
doing this anymore. And it's like, come on.
Right.
This isn't what any of us voted for.
Right. I
Um,
get frustrated as someone who is a regular critic. I am highly critical of Israel, what is happening in Gaza, Benjamin Netanyahu, highly critical of what he did to his country and his own people when he sold them to Pfizer during 2020 to be
yeah,
essentially human experimentation of his own people.
as we should be.
As someone who has been very critical of the policy and the actions of his government on behalf of Israel, it really irritates me, James, when the moment I begin to talk about that, they come in. It's like this swarm, to your point, of bots and trolls who come in with derogatory names. They use the memes and all of like the lowest level anti-Jewish rhetoric to try to just twist what is a reasonable and rational discussion about what is happening on the political stage, on the global stage, and turn it into all Jews are this, or all blacks are this, or all Muslims are this, or all white people are this. It's like the lowest level, 100 level, ridiculousness. And then they have the audacity then to slam me and call me and you, I think at some point, a Zionist or
Oh
a
yeah.
Zionist supporter. And because we don't want to go on that. Like you can criticize Israel and what they're doing without going full blown anti-Jewish or vile in your rhetoric. I mean, it really bothers me, honestly.
Yeah, and a lot of this is foreign influence. A lot of this is bot driven, which is not all foreign bots. Yes, there are the Arab League, Qatar, Russia is involved, Chinese bots are involved. I'm sure other Muslim majority nations, a lot of these are Pakistani bots. Um, a recent report by NCRI, the National the Network Contagion Research Institute at Rutgers, showed that on these contentious issues, like you bring up, you start talking about Israel, that as many as about 40% of the replies that you get are from bots, things that are demonstrably bots.
Wow.
And a lot of it's foreign influence, a lot of it's domestic influence, probably too. We have bot operators in the United States that have political agendas. And the fact of the matter is that there are these huge coordinated campaigns. They do not want to have a real they say you're never allowed to talk about Israel. No, actually, a lot of us have been trying. We've been very concerned about the way that COVID was run. We're very concerned about some of the other issues. We're very concerned about their generally socialist government.
Yeah,
We're very concerned about the fact that virtually every Western nation, including Israel, participated in the globalist scam of 2020.
that's right.
And we want to have real criticisms, but they don't want it to be about criticizing the globalist impact of, like, if we want to talk about the globalists in New Zealand, nobody turns it into some argument about Kiwis and Maoris. But
Right.
what they want to do
Yeah.
immediately, the second Israel gets invoked, they have two things that they want to make the whole conversation be about. Number one is straight anti-Jewish stuff.
Yep.
And number two is Israel's relationship with the United States, which is obviously something they want to break. It's
Mm,
not about, yeah, okay, so the United States, by the way, PS, did globalist shit too, and the British did globalist shit too. The target is the globalists who are also working in and through Israel,
right.
and with the help of members of their government, and that's and in their intelligence community. This is a baseline bad problem, or assumption problem across all Western nations, and we can't have the real conversation because there are massive coordinated um, campaigns to make sure that the conversation turns into pure anti-Semitism or destroy the allyship between the United States and the only democratic Western country in the Middle East, which, if nothing else, is a military and spying uh, observatory. We have more ability to keep an eye on what the openly hostile countries of the Middle East are doing to us because Israel is on our side than we would if it wasn't. I mean, there's a million reasons why it makes sense to maintain this allyship while also getting the freaking globalism out of everything, which doesn't serve anybody's citizens. It's a disaster. So they don't want that conversation. And these coordinated campaigns is the thing I really want to draw attention to. So I had, on and off, I've been tracking what I refer to as the woke right. I was aware of the alt right previously. I never really went full like Trump derangement I did with Trump, actually. I got taken in, but I didn't believe that the alt right itself was this like significant phenomenon in 15 through 20. And then I certainly didn't worry much about it, maybe too much from 2020 forward, except that I went to a conference in early 21, January of 21. And one of the attendees, everybody's always like, name him. And I'm like, I can't. I didn't get his name at the time, and I wouldn't remember it now anyway. I meet 50,000 people a year. I forget names like crazy. I'm sorry. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I just remember he was short and he was in his early 30s, or maybe late 20s. And that's all. There weren't that many people there. We could triangulate and figure it out if I had collaboration with the people who posted the conference, maybe, but it's not really that big of a deal.
Okay.
At lunch, this kid's spouting off, running his mouth, and everybody at the table was uncomfortable. He's getting all radical and hard-edged, and other people had said things like that too, not on the stage, just around the room, but not as extreme as this guy.
Mm,
And so he was talking about the coming civil war. And I was like, are you going to fight in the civil war? And he was like, of course not. And I was like, what are you going to do? He was like, I'm going to make memes to stoke the fighting from my basement, basically. And I was like, really?
okay.
Okay. Well, you don't get to
Mhm.
really advocate for a civil war that destroys your country if you're not going to participate in it. And he
Right.
was like, oh yeah, but it's necessary, blah, blah, blah. And then he keeps going more and more extreme rhetoric. And finally, I don't remember exactly what he said, but I call him out at the lunch table and I'm like, you're actually starting to sound like Hitler. Everybody was visibly uncomfortable. So I
Mm,
said something and he was like, well, at least Hitler knew how to stop communists. And I
okay.
thought, well, that's not the right answer.
Right.
And so everybody got kind of uncomfortable. To the credit, everybody else at the table was like, dude, what the heck? And this guy gets talking to me a little bit later and he's like, listen, the work you do right now against the left back in 21 is extremely useful to us on the radical right now. So we tolerate you, we invite you to stuff. But here's the deal. Sooner or later, we're going to take over and then we're going to force convert you or we're going to kill you.
What?
And that's what he said to my face. I mean, really, he said it more like to my collarbones because he's not very tall.
Okay.
And so I looked him in the face and I said, are you personally going to be the one who does that? And he
Yeah.
said, no, of course not.
Oh my God.
And I sort of wish I'd picked him up by his neck. I had like 60 pounds, 70 pounds on him at least, and I could
Right.
kick his ass. And I mean, I don't really want to go to jail, but he really could have deserved a good solid ass beating for telling me
Oh
he's going to kill
wow.
me later.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a little bit of that mind, but I didn't. It was professional. We were all dressed up and everything. And so I was like, okay, let's keep a tabs on these guys. And so I listened to the people who had more extreme rhetoric, and I just kind of kept a tab on them. I followed them. I listened to what they had to say, and I watched them not only become more radical over 4 years, I also watched them build infrastructure. I watched them
Mm.
move slowly and eventually very quickly after Glenn Beck retired and take over the Blaze. They said they
Mhm.
took over the Blaze. People are like, James, you can't say they took over the Blaze. I'm like, why? They said they took over the Blaze. They said
Wow.
Schmittians, meaning people who subscribe to the radical politics of Carl Schmitt, took over the Blaze. This happened
Really?
during the DeSantis versus Trump free for all during the early
Okay.
part of the primaries.
I know I sense something major, major, major happening in the DeSantis Trump primary. It was very similar to the Trump Cruz primary
Mhm.
of 2015. I remember the bots and the trolls because I've always been consistent. I'm a girl who never changes. I just never change. Okay. If you went back and you listened to my show 10 years before today, I'm saying the exact same things. I just don't change. And so I've been saying, ever since Trump came down the escalator, my opinion was this guy is a New York City liberal Democrat, also a reality TV guy and an ex WWE wrestler. So you do the math and figure out what this guy is going to do with a presidency in his first term and now in his second term. I digress. What I will say though is that there are moments in my career where I sense and actually see a absolute deployment of bots and trolls, online campaigns, social media campaigns, and also the elevation of actual real people who I suspect are actors. I don't even
Ye
think
Yep,
they believe what they're saying. Is that what you're
100%.
okay?
One
Keep going.
100%. So, anyway, I watch all this build out. I'm not gonna get all into all the things that I watched. I was particularly vocal about the Christian nationalist element of this. Now, I'm
Great.
not religious.
Mhm.
Therefore, they use this as a massive wedge. This was proof that James hates Christians. I tried to
Mhm.
counter by pointing out that if I criticize feminists, the feminists say James hates women, but really I'm criticizing feminists, and the feminists call criticism hate, and then they say that because they're women I'm actually speaking for all women, and the Christian nationalist group was doing the same thing. I don't like theocrats, and I called out the misfeasance that the radical Christian nationalists were putting forth. I also pointed out that the federal government was setting up an operation with this, and they said that's proof that James hates Christians, and they have deployed both publicly and in private through huge text and DM campaigns. How do I know? People send me the screenshots of the text they get from prominent members of the conservative movement saying, you need to stop working with James. He hates Christians, which is a complete lie. These are people with million plus follower accounts texting people, telling them to stop paying attention to me and stop working with me, stop inviting me to things on a lie. And
Mm.
so one thing leads to another. This was controversial. It shouldn't have been controversial. I've gone back and looked at it a bunch of times, and it's really stupid. And a lot of Catholics are still very mad at me over something completely fake. Again, it's a psyops. So I get to say all the time, it's one thing to be the target of a psyops. It's a completely different experience to be the subject of one. And so
Interesting.
back at the end of September, it was St. Michael's Day. That's Michael the Archangel. And Trump tweets the prayer of Archangel Michael with a picture, the famous painting of Michael. And I thought, Trump's not very religious. This is really weird. Yeah, it's a battle prayer. So it's like kind of badass, and it's like fits the vibe. And yeah, he's got to pander to Catholics because he needs their vote. The Christian vote is historically bad. He's trying to get that vote. He knows he needs it. But this feels very much like somebody put him up to this. This doesn't fit Trump, right? And so and he had just been shot, and he's had a bit of a religious revival over this, but he's kind of all over the place. But this is very specifically Catholic, right? And I know he's got evangelicals, and I know he's got Catholics in his ear. So he tweets this, and I say, look, here's something you need to know in the bigger picture. The globalists believe the theosophical religion. In the theosophical religion, here's all this stuff about St. Michael. They believe that St. Michael is identical to Satan. They believe that when Catholics pray St. Michael's prayer, they're invoking Satan to come do war on the world. I'm not saying that this is true. I'm saying this
Right.
is what their weird ass evil religion believes. And they believe that, like, that the Fetzer Institute, where social emotional learning was created, that's tangled into just about every evil thing. It's a theosophical new age education and science foundation. That their original symbol was the Archangel Michael. Like, I went into
Okay.
all this stuff, and they were like, they went ape shit on me. It was the most bizarre attack back on me I've ever freaking seen.
Wow.
James hates Christians, James hates Catholics, Deus Vult, Saint Michael this, Saint Michael that, and it's like all this crazy shit. And I was like, in the midst of this, watching it, I was like, this is not organic. This is
Right.
not mad Catholics online.
No.
Who I even didn't even say it
No.
was, I said, be careful, and that it's happening is bad. I also said, I suspect somebody put him up to it. Guess who replied? General Flynn. General Flynn
Mm.
replied and said, since you named me by name, I feel like I did not name him by name, actually. But now I know who put Trump up to it, probably. Like,
Wow.
I think I know
Wow.
who did it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. He's Catholic, so what?
Mhm.
Fine. If that's what he believes and he wants to talk the president into doing it, that's fine. I still think it was ill-advised, but maybe it was fine because you need the Catholic vote or whatever other reasons. Maybe it's just cool. I don't, it doesn't have to be cynical, whatever. Anyway, the explosion all through the month of October that I got off of that was insane. I was like, this
Yeah.
is not real. This,
Right.
like, I'm the lady on the plane, like, that motherfucker is not real.
Oh,
Right.
jeez.
And
Right.
I was 100% certain that I got it's like what the left used to do.
Yeah.
The left would attack you on things that weren't quite legitimate because it's like they saw the crack in your armor, so they all fire their arrows into that crack all at once, even though it doesn't make sense. So I said something that appeared to have, some purchase that they could get on me, a a crack in my armor, and they've all like went
Right.
berserk on this to tear it apart and tear it open. And I was like, oh shit, they're going to move on Trump for the election.
Mm.
So I started to call it the woke right full blast. And then I wrote a hoax in October, sent it in, no, in November, actually. No, I wrote it in October, sent it in November to a Christian nationalist magazine called American Reformer. I went back to my grievance studies roots. I took 6 pages of the Communist Manifesto. I took out proletariat as the good guys, put in new Christian right, took out bourgeoisie as the bad guys, put in classical liberals, and sent this off. I changed the wording a little bit. It was so minimally modified that the comments under the article when they published it were people saying, guys, you've published the Communist Manifesto. Like, do you
Right. It was
understand that
so obvious that
it was super obvious? And
yeah.
so then I come out at the beginning of December that I've done this, and the cancellation was unbelievable.
Right.
The conservative movement kind of in a single step turned its back on me. America Fest, a big turning point event, was coming up. I was not invited to speak for the first time at a turning point event since 2020.
That's Charlie
And
Kirk's operation, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
eventually he got me on stage, but I hosted a panel about a documentary where it was my job to kind of shepherd Mary Margaret Olohan and Riley Gaines and Chloe Cole as the moderator of a panel, also Adam Vina from California. So I bring these guys through a panel. I have maybe a minute in which I get to inject my own opinions as the
Right.
moderator. So
Right.
I spoke but didn't speak,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. I had dozens of prominent conservatives that I know send me threats. If I see you at America Fest, I'm punching you in the face.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
were
word.
pissed. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so the radical right controls the conservative movement because the conservative movement took sides, and it did not take the side of these guys got exposed, right?
Yeah.
It took the side of James is trying to divide us, which is utter
Mm.
bullshit.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, so this is where we are. But this had one more wave, or really, the nasty, nasty wave started in the end of December. If you remember, there was a massive, weird, very fractious debate with very radical elements that erupted on Christmas, starting with Laura Loomer,
Mhm.
who seems to be at the center of like everything that happens like this,
There are a few. Yeah.
pushing the H-1B visa argument. And
Mhm.
everybody had to weigh in and everybody had to get mad. And all these influencers got in. And then it got really nasty. Lots of racist stuff, lots of anti-Indian stuff, lots of Hindu hate, going after Vivek, going after Kash Patel to a degree, going
Right.
after even JD Vance's wife and their
Mhm.
marriage. Like, this all got really nasty. Lots of Nazi propaganda that didn't seem to fit. And I'm
Right.
like, we got another op. So all I said about the H-1B debate was, this is a psyops to split MAGA. Don't get involved.
Yeah.
And I got attacked like I unleashed like I opened a gate in hell and demons just poured
Mm,
out. I got doxxed over this. I got like they hunted down family members. They smeared me. Now it's people sliding into DM saying there's all this sexual rumors about me that you need to watch out and get away from him, blah, blah, blah. It's all coming out eventually. You don't want to
mhm.
be associated with him. Don't invite him to anything,
Wow.
blah, 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 blah. And I haven't had, but the turning point kind of like, you know, saving thing or whatever. I used to have 5 to 15 speaking events a month. I've had the turning point
Oh, well, the
non-speaking event.
spigot listen, James, the spigot has been turned off,
Oh,
right?
I'm out.
So you go in and listen, I've experienced this. I've been in this business for 12 years. The spigot was turned off for me very early on because, as I mentioned, when Trump came down the escalator, I never played ball, not even for a day. So I've been blackballed by conservatism and conservative media since the very beginning. But there have been, as it's evolved, right? And conservative media is now moving into social media, video casting. I'm now probably more of an influencer than I am even a broadcaster, which is how I started. The landscape changes and there are opportunities for me to platform the show and broadcast the show. But I have seen, and this audience knows my stories of when the spigot is turned off, I'm threatened and pressured to jump on the Trump train, go all MAGA. And if I don't do it, rug gets pulled out from right underneath. We lose producers, lose sponsors. This is just par for the course. And this is why I'm really interested in what you have to say, because I would take it a step further. I don't believe that Donald Trump and Vivek and Vance and Elon are kind of these innocent guys who are having their movements, fractured by this else. I think that they're part of the fracturing. I think they're part of the psyop, in my opinion. We can talk about that when we come back, because I do think that this is important, because what this shows, and we have to go to break because we're gonna take a commercial break, and then we're gonna come back, talk again, and then we'll open up the live chat for some questions. I think what this shows is that there is a subversive, um, highly sophisticated operation to infiltrate and destroy everything that is reasonable, rational, and legitimate about these two parties, the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. We're already divided as a nation. But this operation, I think, that has been deployed in earnest probably for the past 15 years or even a little bit more, is going and just twisting these parties into an even more radical version of what they were. And this is why we can't have nice things. This is why it doesn't matter who you elect. This is why every time we switch the parties and elect someone new, we get the exact same policies. They are globalist, expansionist, totalitarian, call them whatever you want, communist, socialist, fascist, the technocrats, whatever it is, it's dystopian and it's totalitarian. And we get it no matter what party we put into office. And this is because we're so busy ripping each other's faces off, right? And thinking that, the other side is so dangerous that we're letting these guys run away with the bank every single time. And so that's my philosophy. That's kind of what I'm getting from James. He's supporting this in some of the experiences that he has had. I would like to name some names when we come back. I'd like to know, you mentioned Laura Loomer. I think she's a pretty well-established agent, some type of chaos agent. I don't really know who pays her or how she gets this done, but I think that, she's highly questionable, a few others as well. So that you guys have an idea of who we're talking about here. I have some ideas, but when we come back, we've got to shut these guys. All right. We have to just stand up to them or not be influenced by them and find each other again if we want to have nice things in this country and we actually want real solutions. So the first step is understanding, what is happening to our country and the discourse in our country, particularly through the two political parties. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, another quick discussion with James. I have some questions for him, and then we will go to your questions and comments. He's highly controversial. I see some of your chats already, some of your comments already on the live chat. If you have a question, all right, don't go with the ad hominem and just, yell about how much you don't like them or issue those ad hominem attacks. Why don't you ask a real question? So ask a real question. I'm sure that he will be happy to answer it, and we can have a nice little discourse when we come back. Keep it tuned right here on the
Parents,
Shannon Joy
I have
Show.
an early Christmas and holiday gift for you. We've all been there. 1 minute your child is bouncing off the walls, perfectly healthy, and an hour later, this child is very sick. You feel helpless, and it can turn your plans upside down, especially on vacation. After thousands of customer requests, the wellness company has just launched the Kids Emergency Medical Kit. You no longer have to deal with emergency illnesses in a panic. Now you can have 6 critical medications at your fingertips to treat 20 plus illnesses for issues children have, such as strep throat, ear infections, lice, and respiratory illnesses. You can avoid urgent care and hospitals. The Kids Emergency Kit has been hand-selected by the wellness company's medical board and includes chewable amoxicillin, dissolvable ivermectin, and an optional EpiPen and more. This also includes a detailed guidebook guiding you step by step in emergencies. Ordering this kit is simple. Only parents can order for their children. Fill out an intake form and you will get a verification call for consent. Then it's delivered to your door. Don't wait till you're in the middle of a crisis and avoid late night urgent care runs. Order your kids' emergency kit today and remove panic from your life. And if 1 or 2 of the prescriptions run out, there's a replenishment option to restock only what you need. Go to dailyclouthealth.com and grab your kids' emergency kit right now. Use code DailyClout to save up to $40 at checkout. These kits are only available in the USA. Thank you.
Pop it into the live chat right now. You guys can ditch the woke coffee brands and fuel up with something real that is blackout coffee. Wake up with a purpose. So delicious, delicious blackout coffee, and very, very valuable sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. So thank you to them. Annie, if you want to pop that link up in the live chat, I would so appreciate it. You guys have to drink coffee, so grab the blackout coffee. James Lindsay is with us, Shannon Joy Show. We are talking about the woke right and mass formation, how this subversive ideology has infected MAGA and the conservative movement, conservative media as well, along with woke. Is it a cult? Can it infect the right just as easily as the left? Well, it looks like it could. And when you see the just recent tweets, James, from marginally successful right-wing media personalities on, that you might consider to be woke right, actually tweeting this out in the past couple days. And this is from Brendan Tilley, a MAGA influencer. And this is what he actually tweeted. I've never been more excited to have lost $10,000 in the stock market this week. Best money I ever spent. MAGA mother effers, all caps. Okay. Then you have people like Benny Johnson, who tweets this: losing money means nothing. Digital ones and zeros. In the end, you won't miss it. Losing your country costs everything. You'll never get it back. Your kids will be slaves to foreign powers who hate us. Without America First policies, we become slaves, fight back. Then you have pro-America politics. This tweet: I love these tariffs. I couldn't care less about a little short-term volatility in the stock market. Again, losing your own money. Then you have, other accounts posting, basically, heading right off of a cliff. Like, what is up now with the fatalistic doomsday death wishes from pretty high platformed influencers on the right? It all seems, James, to me to be a little bit Jim Jonesy, Kool-Aid drinking right off the cliff, where these people are actually trying to influence their followers into harming themselves, right? Financial harm to themselves, their 401k, their economy, leading to job losses. To me, this is an indication of some type of woke virus, a mind virus within the right, where they can't even rationally discern that these policies are going to have highly negative impacts on them. Is that something that you're seeing as well? And is it a cult?
There are a few explanations that are possible. One is certainly that there is a cult mentality, and I didn't say that it's merely an explanation. Let me be very clear. There is a cult mentality that is
Yeah.
happening. You're either on board with whatever the hell the program is that the influencers are telling you that may or may not line up to a White House initiative. In fact, they might decide they don't like one, and then everybody has to be against it. But
Right.
all the ones that they like, everybody has to be for it. That's cult mentality.
Right.
And as you and I already discussed, people know at the influence tier that the spigot gets turned off if you don't play the game.
Hmm.
Now, there's another explanation. These people are influencers. Influencers are broadcasters. Broadcasters are easy to buy.
Mm.
They are not expensive products if you're trying to push an ideological agenda. For a few $100s per tweet, we're not talking millions, we're not talking life-changing money. For a few $100s per tweet, you can get these people to say damn near anything. It's
Mm.
pretty amazing. So there's a huge propaganda component that I think is paid for and coordinated. We saw that again, whether it was the Trump DeSantis situation, whether it was during the election, whether it's been since. We see this all over the place. There are paid influencers. The influencers are in networks. A lot of people don't know that. The behind the scenes, they're in networks, group chats, Discord servers, and so on, where they discuss which talking points they're going to push, which ones are going to blow up. And they're usually tailored to what's going to create the kind of controversy that maximizes the Twitter payout algorithms, by the way.
Wow.
This has been exposed a couple of times. Number one, we have the conservative OG, which was the influencer network that kicked off the H-1B debate, totally fake. Then they lost control of it. Provably, Russian and other foreign bots mostly took control of that and pushed it into Nazi and racist territories. Totally provable, demonstrable, has been demonstrated again by the NCRI, the Network Contagion Research Institute. Totally fake astroturf shit. Another example was recently with the SNAP debate about what we should do with food stamp money. To put it in older terms, should it be allowed to buy sodas or should it not? And all of a sudden, you had a bunch of MAGA influencers come out and they're pushing that, very paradoxically, it seems, that food stamps should be allowed. People should be allowed to buy whatever they want with their food stamps. There should be absolutely no limits. They should certainly be allowed to buy cola if they want to. And what you actually ended up finding out was that there's a company called Influenceable. It's a PR company. The soda companies hired Influenceable to pay influencers to push those messages. So there's a lot of it that's fake. And the fake drives the cult, and it's in line with the cult. We know that political campaigns, for example, by the way, this is the easiest part to fix. When it's a political campaign or a political or public entity paying people to push certain messages, it would be a very easy fix at the level of the FCC to require that that is disclosed. Um, Especially easy with campaign law, that if somebody's pushing for is paid by a political campaign to tweet, that that has to be disclosed. Harder with advertisers, but this is some shady shit.
Yeah, James, I will say, coming from broadcasting, so I was a terrestrial AM radio broadcaster before I got into influencing and podcasting and social media. Prior to that, I spent 14 years at the back of the house, so in advertising and marketing for radio, television, billboard. So I wrote ads, I copyrighted, I managed campaigns, worked with really big clients, all over the country. And I will tell you, even in the advertising world, there is something called pay to play, right? So you have to disclose if, the messaging on your radio station or in television is a paid sponsorship. Like that is hard and fast rule, something that we were always dealing with. And it led to what was before, the wall of separation between editorial and the news, and then the paid advertising portion of like a television station. So this is illegal in every other sense of the word except for this influencer space. So social media has now created this new space that is kind of like the wild west. Ethically, for my audience, they know when an advertiser is being pushed. So I will mention that they're sponsored. Blackout Coffee, for example, is a sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. So, I divulge that to the audience, and this audience knows that I will never, ever, ever take money, any type of paid campaign ever, for an issue item or campaign item or a politician or a political party. I just won't do that, now. But even if I ever did, I would disclose it to them. So I think you're touching on something actually incredibly important, that these campaigns, how much of a role do you think these PR companies are playing in the buying off of influencers and media people and even entire networks? You talked about the Blaze being just completely infiltrated and taken over. How large of a role do you think the PR companies are playing? And then who ultimately do you think is behind this? Because this is subversive, it's sophisticated, and it is ubiquitous. I mean, it is a global. It reminds me of the COVID operation, right? And however many different languages across the globe, it was all the same thing. And we're even seeing now in Germany, Starmer has his own version of Doge. Like every European country, Western democracy has their own version of Doge, and all it is really merging the government with private corporations, which is by definition fascism, right? So we have this version of what is happening, the privatization of everything here in the US happening all over the country. So it just seems massive to me. Do you have any thoughts on who's behind it and who are the players?
Yeah, I don't know how much the kind of PR I don't know what percentage the PR is. I just know it's there. It's not insignificant. And it's beyond PR because there are other reasons that people would post things that they may or may not agree with. They may just not care. And there's a paycheck. Maybe that's coming from a corporation. Maybe that's coming from a campaign. Maybe that's coming from a foreign government. We saw the tenant media scandal where apparently unknowingly Benny Johnson was on the screen, for example. He was taking a not insignificant amount of money from Russia to promote ideas. His show was sponsored through Tenant Media because Tenant Media took $10 million of Russian money, according to the DOJ, and it was funneling it to influencers. And that the purpose of that money going to the influencers, according to the Tenant Media sting from the Department of Justice, was to sow division in MAGA. So it was the Benny Johnson was named as a victim, not as a perpetrator in that by the DOJ. He did not know he was receiving money, but he was hand selected to receive money because he sows division. And so he
Would tell his audience losing money means nothing. So who is paying him to defend tariffs and the fleecing of the American people by
I don't know.
radical
I don't
inflation?
know. What I would tell you is that if this is a paid coordinated campaign, that the people who are paying for it and coordinating it are likely either the exact same people who are funding and pushing the left, as has happened in all the world wars in the past, that the same people were funding both sides, or that
Mm.
it's this new tech right, and whatever their relationship is to the global project, I don't know. Peter Thiel's a member of the Bilderberg Group, so that's like not inconsequential. So
Mm-mm.
the weirdo right has its own billionaires as well. For example, the organization that I sent the hoax paper to, the Communist Manifesto for Christian Nationalists, is called American Reformer. And American Reformer kind of suspiciously shares an EIN number with two other organizations. One is called New Founding. New Founding is an investment company. Mark Andreessen has dumped a ton of money into that. And then on the other hand, it shares an EIN with the Center for Baptist Leadership, which is headed up by William Wolf, who's working his way into through the new faith office that Trump created to get inside the White House. And so, like, this is obviously, like you said, coordinated and sophisticated. We can make some guesses as to where the money is coming from. The big tech lords are likely. Foreign money is likely. And if it's some of the same people and the same groups that are coordinating a right hand of the left, that wouldn't surprise me either. But I don't think it's organic. And I don't know that it reflects Benny Johnson's opinion. But I have to disclaim, because I'm personally torn on this tariff issue, not because I think it's good that people are losing tens of thousands of dollars in their portfolio, or in some cases much more. It's because I don't know if Trump is catching lightning in a bottle. I am generally opposed to the concept of tariffs. I know Trump really likes it. I know that historically there was a somewhat different circumstance. The arguments are complicated and they're economic and they're beyond my grasp. But so far, he's dragged people to the negotiating table. All I know about the tariffs is that this program seems like it only works if it only lasts in the short term in order to get countries to give a better tariff deal to the United States than they had in the past. And I don't know if that's the case. It may also
Yeah.
damage the Chinese economy. But so I'm trying to give Benny and these other influencers as much credit as they can possibly have.
I
This
wouldn't.
might be a workable plan that's one of these crazy Trump things that works out. But it also very well could be the initiation of the decimation of the American economy or the Western economy. They keep promising there's a golden age on the other side, but the global program has been for years to move all of the center of gravity economically and politically to the Middle East and to China, which are
Right.
partnered to the Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
And this may well play in this. China has moves that its economy, or its market, I should say, undoubtedly was damaged yesterday. That's on the table. Our market actually has recovered. It's completely green today. So I don't know what to say about that, except that also that the market is not necessarily the right indicator to look for, especially over something that will play out over months.
Right.
But these two things combined suggest that maybe he's playing a smart game. Maybe he's not playing a smart game. But this idea like, hey, average American, you just lost tens of thousands of dollars of your retirement, and I'm Benny Johnson, and I get paid by fucking Russians, and money's just ones and zeros. You'll never even miss it. Like, get off of it. Like,
Right.
and if you're being paid to tweet that, it's so disgustingly disingenuous that it makes me so mad that I am saying bad words. And maybe that's not the case. Let's be nice. But I don't know if that's the case. But if that's the case, it's utterly disgusting. But he's saying, hey, listen, buckle up. This is all for the greater good. I don't like greater good, common good arguments. And the message is everybody's supposed to shut up. Trump puts out this word that's supposed to be derisive, panicking. That's a stupid word. So it's a government by people who panic. The political party of the weak and the stupid is what Trump called these people, panicans.
Okay.
And so everybody who doesn't agree with them is a panicking or is somebody to make fun of. And it's like, no, actually, when you lose tens of thousands of dollars of your retirement, you have every reason or every right and every reason to raise your voice and say, hang on, I deserve an explanation for how this is supposed to work. If Trump is catching lightning in a bottle, I want to hear how it works. I don't want to hear Benny Johnson getting on his show and telling me, hey, trust the plan, guys. It's so QAnon, which was a freaking intelligence op.
Right.
I don't trust it. Nobody has the reason to trust it. And if they want our trust, if this is an actual strategy that's supposed to work, we should have a hell of a lot more information as to how the strategy is supposed to work.
Well, and this is why I say it's not a see, and this is where even, I love Jordan Schachtel, and he's out there, God bless his heart, trying to make trying to rationalize or be reasonable about what Trump is doing and what he has been doing over the past 2 months. And I tweeted out, listen, if you're trying to rationally understand what Trump is doing, you're completely missing the point. The point is the chaos. That's my philosophy here, is that Trump is a chaos agent. So I would even say, I would take it probably a step further than you and say, if we're talking about influencers here and an influencer class, I would say one of the biggest, most glaring examples of that is Trump himself. Right. Again, classically trained as a WWE wrestler, a reality TV star, a firm, solid, liberal Democrat that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein for 10 years, BFF, right? Best friends forever. And so if I wanted to, if I was in central casting for the destruction of the United States of America and wanted to find that perfect person to come in, disrupt the conservative movement, the Republican Party, drive it into the ground, rip it to the left, and then inject mass chaos, I would say, Donald Trump, here you go. You got the role. That's just my opinion, right? This is what's so difficult about trying to analyze what's happening in politics today. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
Crazy. And everyone has angles and everyone's being paid off. There's black money, secret money, psyops. I mean, blackmail, coercion. Like, what are these deals? Like, I don't know. I have so many colleagues in this business, James, right? And they're like, well, let's analyze Trump's tariff policy. Right? And I'm like, what are you talking? You can't analyze any. Let's analyze Joe Biden, who was propped up again. They propped him up like a corpse in front of Democrats for 4 years. And Democrats are like, yeah, but this is crazy.
This has the same feel. And, I don't have a lot of purchase on what's going on behind the scenes, obviously. But what I do have a lot of purchase on, because despite my cancellation, I said I don't have any paid speaking. Guess what? I'm still speaking. They're just not paying me. So I'm
Right.
still going a lot of places, and I'm
Yeah.
making a dedicated effort to make sure I keep going a lot of places. And I go to a lot of conservative things, and I go to a lot of kind of, middle of the road things. I was at a MAHA type event over the last
Okay.
weekend, and everywhere I go, this isn't dependent on the Maha crowd. This is everywhere I go. This is people that on the political spectrum range all the way through Barry Weiss on the one end to Charlie Kirk on the other. And I'm
Right.
not talking about these people, these individuals. I'm saying as
As
avatars
examples.
of political positions. Uh, I, I'm with people all the way across this. And what I hear from everybody who's not a MAGA influencer or a bot on the internet is what the hell is going on. And everybody thinks that something is very, very wrong,
Thank
that
you.
Trump 7 is not what Trump 45 was. And it's not, that they're no longer sure this is what they voted for. And that if there's some kind of a strategy or a plan that's not just chaos, they would love to know what it is. And I'm hearing from, like I said, a very wide swath, what we might consider, the right end of the left, somewhere near the center, all the way over to pretty far deep into MAGA conservatism, is people, normal people, not the influencers, who don't
Normal
have
people.
the slightest idea what's going on and are scared shitless
Yeah.
of what's happening, and think that something very suspicious and very bad is going on. And it's like, I feel like you said, they put up Biden. He's basically weekend at Bernie's. There's like this huge campaign. He's not sick. He doesn't have dementia. Everything's great. Look how smart he is. He's smart behind closed doors. Like all these different things that they said. And it's like the influencer tier on the left, so to speak, which was mostly mainstream media hosts, was trying to create this, like, just go along with it. Let's go. Everybody's on the page. At least it's not Trump
Right.
energy. And now we have this, like, just go along with it. Everybody's on the page. At least it's not Kamala weird thing happening on the right from its core media tier, which is the influencers, while everybody else is like, what's happening? What's going on here?
Right. I don't think that there's any way to analyze what is happening right now because there's so much deception. Like we aren't getting the full story, right? We don't know. I just got a text from my girlfriend this morning who follows loosely, and she cannot believe that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is recommending the MMR vaccine. Literally less than 2 years ago, maybe it was 24 months ago, he just went down a litany. I mean, we have video of Bobby Kennedy Jr. saying that there are a lot of questions about the MMR vaccine. It could likely kill and harm more children than it actually saves from measles. That's on the record. And the 180, the about face, is frankly breathtaking. It's wow. Like they really want to tell us that 2 + 2 is 5. They
Yeah,
really want
so
to say, the sky is green. It
so they broke the Republicans from the Democrats, and then, I mean, the Democrats went buck wild, and then you've got the Republicans. And so what they've got is, you got regular Republicans, you've got rhinos, um, you've got these MAGAs, you've got Maha now that are over here, and it's very clear that they're trying to split those entities, but particularly they're trying to split Maha and MAGA apart from one another. So they think each other are crazy and don't like each other. They want MAGA to think that the Maha are a bunch of leftists, and the MAGA is a bunch of radical right. They're feeding in all this racial identity politics to make MAGA look like a bunch of racists and anti-Semites. Then simultaneously inside each of those, they're splitting those apart too. And I don't know
Mm,
where I don't know who the they are. I just know that these are coordinated and intentional campaigns that involve bots. And everybody says, well, bots means it's fake. And I say, no, bots means it's paid for. It means
right.
that somebody invested money to make this happen, which is much worse than, a bunch of trolls in a Discord server deciding they're going to go, cause chaos on the internet. It's a far more concerning thing when somebody's putting forth large amounts of money to make some campaign happen. And those campaigns are very clearly, now that within the Republican Party or within the coalition that elected Trump, which is very, very politically diverse, it's like scatter them like pool balls. That's the break. And then just start driving in one ball after the other. And the balls,
Mm,
what that means is, okay, here's a cluster. It's Maha. We're going to split that up. And now here's a cluster. It's MAGA. We're going to split that up. And we're going to split them in ways where their extreme wing freaks everybody else out and splits them apart from one another. And the idea seems to be the division. And it's
Yes.
again, like
Well,
take the
but
Israel thing, right? And I know we're probably pushing on time. The
yeah.
point isn't to get people to hate Israel. It's not to get people to like Israel. It's to get some people to hate Israel and other people to like Israel. It's
Mm,
to get two positions that don't like each other.
right.
And this is a completely different strategy than, oh, they're just trying to sway everybody to be anti-Semitic. No, they want warring factions that won't work together.
Right. And we are all dead on the live chat. Chaos is the point. And I do believe that that's the case. Like we are, James, when I want to say 18 or 19 years old, I was the manager at a little ice cream shop. I was the closing manager. And so I would work. And then at the end, I was responsible for closing the drawer and counting all the money and making sure that everything was all fair and square. And I'd put it in the envelope, whatever. One night, I'll never forget this. One night I'm closing, I'm, about to do the register, and a guy comes in and he's a little agitated, wants some ice cream, just gets like a little cone, and then gives me a 20. And I give him his change. And he's like, oh, well, can you change this dollar into that dollar? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, everything started moving really fast. He wanted a 5. He wanted 2 5s for the 10 and 1 10 for the 5 and 3 1s for the 10 and this and that. And I'm getting more and more flustered. Like, what the heck is going on here? And all of a sudden, at one point, like it just clicked in my mind. This guy is a quick change artist. He's coming in, and he was basically, that's what they do. They come in and they move really fast, and it's kind of chaotic and confusing, and you don't know what's going on. And I was like, okay, buddy, hold it down, and I figured it out and kicked him out of the place. But it was a little swindle. It was a guy trying to go in and exchange his 20 for $30 or $40 if he could have gotten me to do it. And this is kind of how I feel today, right? Like when I get the sense when we are in a psyop that it is mass confusion, mass chaos. Like I know what I believe, but I don't even know what to believe, right? Because there are so many conflicting voices, and people who I thought were going to say this don't say it. And then you have Bobby Kennedy, who is now like the number one vaccine salesman in the US, which is just crazy. It's mind blowing. And it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And, then you look at like the hands off rally, for example, and these people are protesting Doge, which is essentially the private takeover of governmental functions, and handing Elon Musk and Peter Thiel the keys to the castle, right? I mean, we don't even know what's going on with Doge and how much information technologically they have on Americans now, not to mention all of their competitors. And so I'm looking at these people at the hands off rally, and I'm like, gosh, I might go down there and join you, because there are some, I know they're Democrats and they're on the left, but at the same time, I agree. I think things are happening too fast, and they're messing with our economy, and these tariffs are going to be disastrous. And it's all just way too much. And I just threw that all out there to you. But that's the sense that I get. And I'm the girl, like, listen, my job is to pay attention all the time. Like, my job is to try to figure this shit out, and I can't even figure it out. I
Yeah.
don't.
So again, there's two things, and I don't know which one's true, just like you. I don't know which one's true. It is possible that we need blitzkrieg to shake up the entrenchment that we're up against. And then on the other hand, are we just instead doing the modern economic equivalent of taking Poland, which I make the deliberate analogy to the National Socialists because it's I'm wanting to say that's bad. I don't know which of the two things is happening. I just know that everything's happening too fast for the average person to keep up with. And like I said, if I were to do, like I'm always taking the temperature. I noticed it the other day, and somebody called me out on it. They say, if I tell you something, you text me back and you're like, why do you think that? And it's not that you disagree, which is apparently it's off-putting because I always come off like I'm disagreeing, but I'm actually interested in people's thought processes because I want to know how they got to their conclusions, because I'm always taking the temperature. What do people think and why do they think it? And in fact, I'm more interested in why they think it than I am in what they actually think. But I want to know a kind of a genuine general opinion poll for the people who self-select and being willing to talk to me somewhat openly. And like I said, what I can draw from this is everywhere that I go, all the way across from, like I said, using Barry Weiss as a figurehead for a political position and Charlie Kirk as a figurehead for a political position, and everything in between those two lines that I talk to is freaking the hell out. and cannot get their head around what's happening, and it's a very concerning situation for them. And so this sense that maybe we're going too fast, maybe we're doing things we shouldn't be doing, maybe we're doing things like you said with Doge that are actually deeply concerning under the cover of necessity. Um, these are all very real concerns that people are gaining very, very rapidly. And I think that what it's going to do is, I have this phrase I use a lot, and I think it's actually really good. It turns out in politics is when the stage loses the room. So there comes a moment when the stage, and so that's going to be the political operative class plus the influencers and the media apparatus attached to it, when they talk and the room doesn't believe them anymore. And what happens in a real room when the stage loses the room is that the room starts talking amongst itself and starts drowning out the stage, and no one cares what's being said on stage. And then eventually, the stage has to try to regain control somehow. And I feel as though the way this is going, and again, I don't know if what's happening, I don't know. I'm just going to be agnostic very vocally one more time. I don't know if what's happening is the right thing or the wrong thing. I know it's making people very nervous, and I know that the stage is losing the room, and I know that therefore the first crisis shock of this split is coming.
Mm,
And this is coming likely within a few months. And at that time, we can be absolutely certain that the radicals will, as they always do, never let a crisis go to waste, will do everything in their power to capitalize upon and misdirect people in the coming break, where where Trump basically no longer holds the MAGA movement um, as like as like an effective leader,
right.
because we're all talking amongst ourselves and not listening anymore.
Right. Well, and I actually think I'm so glad that you brought that up. I've never heard it described that way when the room leaves the stage. I do also get the sense as a, someone who observes the culture. And it might be one of the reasons you mentioned that, the stock market didn't do nearly as bad on Monday as people thought it was going to do. And it could also explain why, 30% of the American public refuse to take the COVID-19 shots, right? Like they're having less impact. And so when they want us to panic, what do they want? They want a meltdown in the markets. They
Yeah,
want people to panic. They want people to shut themselves down and not engage in commerce. And this idea that Americans are kind of like, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. I know that there are so many people right now, they're buying physical gold and silver, they're moving some of their investments. I just recently moved all of my banking from a big corporate bank to a small local federal credit union, right? And everybody is just kind of tightening their belts and getting ready to continue with commerce regardless of what they do up there in the periphery and what they might try to do with tariffs to destroy this economy. There is this phenomenon, I think, that could emerge where the American people just don't care. They don't care what laws they pass in Washington, D.C. They don't care what they do in D.C. They don't care what Trump is saying. They don't care what the Democrats are saying. They just tune it out because there's just too much of it. And I could really see that happening. I hope that happens because
that's
then we'll get
increasingly how I am.
right. Yeah, me
I'm
too.
very much that way now. In fact, it's funny. It's like all these conservative, entities and the administration. It's like I worked really, really hard to try to make sure that Trump would be able to get elected over the Democrats, to advance the understanding of what the left was doing with communism and fascism, both. Even with the threat coming into flank from the radical right or the woke right or the Christian nationalists, however we want to label them, it doesn't really matter. Um, I worked really hard on that, and then all of a sudden, it's like I became the subject of the psyops. I got kicked off the porch like the bad dog that barked when he wasn't supposed to, or something, or barked. You brought the shady neighbor over, and I barked at him, and they're like, "Go away, dog." And
MAGA, and
yeah, that's right,
you were
absolutely,
you
to
were saying
protect
to them,
MAGA in particular and
right?
Trump's ability to govern.
Yeah,
And
you're being
so
a
I, what happened in the process of this is they lost me.
right.
They lost me. I don't care. I literally don't. People say, "What do you think about the administration's doing?" And they're really frustrated with me because my text back every time is, "I don't care what the administration's doing. I'm not interested in them. They have
Right.
lost me. I just don't care." "Well, what do you think about these tariffs?" "Well, A, I don't know, and B, I don't care. I just don't care."
Right. But I love that about us, though. That's so amazingly American. I mean, wouldn't that be the great American revolution of the 21st century where we just don't care?
That's what
We're
most
like,
of us did in Tennessee during COVID. The
right,
governor was like, "Wear a mask," and we're like, "Yeah, no."
for you.
It wasn't like we got in the I mean, some people did. We had the first lawsuit in the state
Yeah,
filed to get out of it, but we were basically like, "Yeah, that's nice."
right.
Like,
Not
glad you
doing it.
said that. And then outside of, like, the cities, nobody did it. We just didn't do it.
I think we also get the sense, we falsely believe that the government, the tech bros, the globalists, the NGOs have a lot more power and a lot more intellect than they actually do, right? Like we see this big, scary, monolithic, all powerful thing that can blackmail and coerce. And they can do a little blackmail and a little coercion and they can buy people off and they can get some things done. But I honestly think it's a much, much harder thing to do than we imagine to collapse the entire US economy and get us into such a state of panic and fear that they can usher in their digital currency or their new digital control grid or whatever it is that Peter Thiel is fantasizing about every night that he wants to deploy here in the US and Elon Musk's, bot farms or actual robots. Like I just don't think they're as powerful as we think they are. And the key might just be for us to just ignore them and do our own thing.
Yeah, it comes down to if they can do things like freeze our bank accounts like we saw in Canada, or shut off our ability to use money like we see in China with the
Yeah.
social credit system. Things that really can on a very individual scale. I mean, I'm scared as shit of drones and robots, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
I don't think that they're that. I think that the tech is. I don't think the tech is there personally.
yeah, but I've seen how tech has developed. I mean, I saw that meme the other day where it shows the Wright brothers in 1903 on the beach at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and then it shows the moon landing in 1969, and
Right.
it's like that's 66 years apart. And then
Mhm.
you look at the stupid moon lander, compared to, I mean, just to give Elon props, if you're catching a friggin' rocket ship
Right.
vertically with chopsticks, that's pretty
Right.
cool tech.
Yeah.
Like, we've come a long way, baby, and so I'm assuming that the drones and the robots are like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna die by robot dog. I'm almost convinced of this.
That's a psyop, James. They just want you to think. They're just trying to. It's a fear psyop that they want to.
Man, it's working. Every time I see one of those robots do a backflip, I'm like, "I'm done."
It is working. My husband, I got in a big argument with my husband over the weekend because he's like, "Oh my gosh, AI. Oh my gosh, the robots." I'm like, dude, did you know that Leonardo da Vinci, the way he paid his bills was drawing up really scary sketches of weapons and weapon machines for like the big rich baron that he worked for. And then the baron would like ship them off to his adversaries and be like, "Don't mess with me. Look at my weapons." And they were really scary, but none of them worked. Like none of them.
That's hilarious.
It was just an illusion,
It's just
right?
a psyops.
It was a psyop. It's like an early version. Thank you to Sasha Latapova, who told that story brilliantly in one of her recent Substacks. But yeah, no, I definitely think that the fear propaganda is out there. Really interesting convo with you today, James. I really appreciate our conversations, your perspective. And we're running out of time, but I want you guys to consider following James. He's on Twitter. His handle is @ConceptualJames. Website is newdiscourses.com, and you just released a new podcast. You're doing a new series on the woke, right?
Well, the book of woke, actually. A lot of people think like James has made up this definition of woke. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. There is a book. It was written in 2005. And when I found out about this idea, that you see those words, critical constructivism, I read it on Wikipedia in like 2016 or 17, those words and its description. I was like, wow, that's woke. Well, we didn't call it woke then. I was like, that's the movement. That's what the left is doing. So I have this book. And so I'm doing a podcast series going through and explaining the woke by the guy who, in my opinion, made Marxism woke. Like, this is where woke came together, and it was in education theory, and it's, I think, going to be very eye-opening for people to hear. Like, here, this is 2005. It sounds like, it applies to basically everything we're talking about, everything we've seen and experienced, and it applies to the radicals on the right as well, so that I'm not just like willy-nilly. I don't love the term woke right. I think it's hilarious that they're mad about it, but I'm not willy-nilly calling them woke. The Nazis were woke, and I can explain why. How? By using this book. It's very clear.
Right. Well, and didn't we see? I mean, just a very recent example. There was the battle between the communists and the socialists or fascists in Nazi Germany. So, I mean, you can see how they They take, two really bad philosophies and then try to draw us all into those and then have us fight with each other for a really bad philosophy. And, they end up running away to the bank every single time.
Here's a fun historical fact for you to close with. One of the Nazi slogans was Deutschland erwacht,
Okay.
which means Deutschland awake or
Okay.
Germany woke.
There you go. No, seriously. I mean, listen, nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes, King Solomon, one of my favorite chapters of the Bible. There really is nothing new under the sun, and they're going to reuse this to move us into oppression. And our job is to stop them. Thank you to James Lindsay. Great show. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys, for being with us today on the Shannon Joy Show. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Please make sure that you scroll down in the description and patronize the amazing sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show, who you heard from today, especially our friends over at Blackout Coffee. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/joy right now. Use that promo code JOY, JOY, for 20% off your order. So a full 20%, best deal out there. And we're super thankful for Blackout Coffee. You're going to hear about them for the rest of the week here on the Shannon Joy Show. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.